Anita Amstutz is a 14-year resident of Albuquerque. After a first vocation as a social worker, she returned to seminary and became an ordained Mennonite minister and was the pastor of Albuquerque Mennonite Church for 13 years. Hailing originally from Northeast Ohio, she grew up as a farmer's daughter, which is probably a good reason why she was drawn to the unpredictable and joyful passion of beekeeping. She's a 2-year certified beekeeper with New Mexico Beekeeping Association, and during the days is an advocate, blogger, and educator with her small organization, Think Like a Bee, on all things bees. Currently, she is working with the ABQ City Council to make us a Bee City USA. She's also working on a book contract about the very important practice of Sabbath keeping. For fun, Anita likes to sing, read, watch PBS Masterpiece Theater, hang with her husband Kenneth and friends, going hiking, bird watching, gardening, and generally getting off the grid with nature. Please welcome Anita.
Thank you, Laura. That was a beautiful introduction. I don't know who wrote it, but it sounded very nice. So the last time I was here, it was for a sad and somber occasion. It was for the funeral of a homeless man who had died from police violence, and Angela and I worked together on that service with others from other interfaith communities. And so it is good to be here with you today on a more joyful note, celebrating the creation, the wonder of creation, and I am so grateful that this is in the DNA of this congregation, to celebrate Holy Mother Earth and to find the goodness of that on a regular basis. So thank you for inviting me today, to Doug, the worship committee, and also to Pastors Angela and Christine for welcoming me here today. Angela and Christine, we've been colleagues for about 14 years, and it's good to know that you continue the good work here in the trenches. And thank you to all of you who have come out today with an open heart to hear perhaps something a little strange, think like a bee. So when I was thinking, how do I talk about what it is to think like a bee, I thought maybe I'll find a few succinct points and just bullet point it. And the best bullet-pointed list I found was at the Garden Club of Albuquerque, which has a wonderful T-shirt there. It's like, think like a bee. They also have think like a ladybug, think like a butterfly. Many shirts, you should visit and see that. But the first one is create a buzz. The second one is sip life's sweet moments. Mind your own beeswax. Work together. Always find your way home. Stick close to the honey. And be yourself, most of all. I could stop right there, actually, because that kind of lines it out, but I did come up with a few more points since I have 20 minutes, so bear with me. Thank you, Laura, for reading that wonderful poem by Antonio Machado, which talks about the way bees make honey out of our mistakes. And I have found that myself. I don't know about you, but I've made some doozies in my life. I have aggrieved myself and others through bad choices. And it's not just a metaphor that honey can redeem our mistakes. Because honey, in reality, has been researched to have antifungal, antibiotic, antimicrobial properties. And they are now researching it for wound care and using it around the world. So it is an apt image, that golden honey overflowing the perimeters of our heart and leaking, drip, 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 deep into the recesses of the place where we keep hidden things from even ourselves and things from others that we don't want people to see. And so as the warm, fragrant, flowery syrup begins to drip down and it begins to thaw even the most frozen, painful, and wounded places in ourselves. Bees, as all creatures on this planet, are very amazing at adapting to what life hands them. And we can learn from this on that account. They are resilient beyond belief. And as a beekeeper for Lowe's 6 years, maybe 6.5 now, I have visited some terrible things on my bees out of ignorance and fear. A bee friend once said that we don't so much keep our bees as they keep us. And that is true because everything is medicine from the hive, as I said earlier. And fortunately, an individual bee only lives about 30 to 45 days, and then it dies. And so a single bee will not keep a grudge against the beekeeper. But the hive mind is something to be reckoned with. It's not just one bee that carries the information and the consciousness and the wisdom of how to act in the world. It's the whole hive mind. And so that's what I am talking about today when I talk about think like a bee. It's the hive itself. It's the whole colony. So this summer I have a colony that is hot. And when we talk about a hot hive, it means it's going through some transition, and it might even have some Africanized genes in it, which have moved from the south, and we now have some Africanized genes which make them actually they're very busy when they have those genes and very productive. But it also can mean some drama. So I was opening this hive, and I don't know what was going on, whether the queen had died and she was being replaced, whether the drones were being kicked out. The drones are the male in the hive, and they bring the genetic content. But after that, they're just lounging around drinking Mai Tais, so the girls will kick them out eventually. Overpopulation, they might have wall-to-wall honey reserves, so they start cross-combing. Ask your pastor, Christine, about this, what a nightmare cross-combing is for a beekeeper. So opening my hive only added to the complication because they see me as a predator. I'm like a bear opening for honey or whatever else I want to take. So that day I didn't veil up or suit up very well. I'm kind of getting loose in my habits, and my veil was open a little bit. Well, those bees just scurried right up there, and they started to sting my neck, and I've had, not this time, but other times, I've had bees in my nose and in my ears stinging me, and it's not a pretty sight. So I am quickly closing that hive up and racing as fast as I can away. And if you want to learn humility, that's a good way to do it. You know who's in charge. So I showered, changed my clothes, sat down to breakfast on my porch thinking, okay, this is great. I can watch my bees and just sit here and enjoy the morning. Well, the hive mind was not going to let that one go. So they started to send guard bees zooming in on me while I was sitting there, and they started circling around me and coming in for the kill. And so I realized they remembered. So they sent me inside, and when I looked down, I noticed I had black and brown on, which is like, let's face it, predator colors. So the hive mind is smart, and usually smarter than the beekeeper. The name for my organization, Think Like a Bee, and I left some brochures in your social hall in case you want to learn more about our tiny organization that just came into being after I left my ministry post. It came as I watched my girls, as I affectionately call them, because all the workers in the hive are literally girls, all the way to the queen. So the title for this nonprofit came to me as I was became a student of honeybees, and I realized in order to become a decent beekeeper, I would need to learn to get inside the hive mind or the brain of a bee. And it wasn't lost on me also that we as humans can relearn better habits or ways to live better by observing bees as well. And actually, bee colonies are much like humans, which is probably why we're fascinated by them, because they have a social organization that is very similar to us, very complicated, highly structured. They have a division of labor, a language, a way of communicating that includes things like the waggle dance, which I could illustrate, but I won't. Gestures of communication that are highly nonverbal. We often don't realize that we are constantly sending out nonverbal cues. And bees bump up against one another, touch each other, share spit, use their antennas to communicate, and send all kinds of smells and scents that are called pheromones. And sadly, like us, they can also exercise violence upon the members of their community as a form of social control, dominance, or survival. But one of the biggest lessons for me has been their resilience and their cheerful community spirit. They always think of the commonwealth first. There are not any prima donnas in the hive or me first. And contrary to popular opinion, the queen is not a prima donna. The queen goes out and mates, she comes back, and she lives a life of drudgery in the hive. She basically lays eggs up to 2,000 a day until she is emptied out and she dies in the dark. Her sisters take care of her, feed her, groom her, everything that she needs, and then her life is done. So, and the queen is very important in terms of sending out pheromones. If the queen is right, everything is right. You know that. If mama is good, everybody is good, something to that effect. Now, I'm not advocating lives of drudgery for us, but the bee's hallmark service for the common good is truly remarkable, something our culture desperately needs to deepen into now. Overall, you might say, the hive is like a utopia. There is a division of labor. All benefit from equal access to resources and a chance to fulfill their fullest insect potential, as fully as one can in the creaturely world, which is, run by instinct. And they move through each role in succession, beginning with the nurse bee. As soon as they pop out of their cell, they're cleaning their cell out and feeding the babies. Then they move to janitor bee or a mortician bee, carrying out the dead. Architect, comb builder, and if you've seen their combs, they're beautiful models of architecture. Honey storer, guard bee, and finally, the pinnacle for the bee is field bee, dancing among the flowers, gathering pollen and nectar for the hive in the warm sunshine, and feeding the colony and sustaining them through the long winter. So believe me, this role isn't all that it's cracked up to be, even though the bees strive to become that at the end of their life. I often see their wings ragged at the end of their lives, and they'll be crawling outside the hive before they die. And this role also has the most risk of being drowned by, rainstorms, or being picked off by birds, or a merry backyard gardener spraying them with some sort of chemical. But they do use their life energy in those final gloried, hallowed hours of gathering nectar for honey. Still, imagine the beehive is a microcosm of the whole world, where everyone has a part to play in a well-orchestrated drama of life and death. There are no homeless bees, unless, of course, we as humans evict them because we don't like them putting up shop in our attics. There are no unemployed bees. All have jobs. Even the most menial job is absolutely of worth and necessary in the hive. Every bee gets a chance to move up in life and experience the sweetness of nectar gathering in all its hardness and poetic beauty. And there are no bee civil wars, although sometimes another hive will try to rob it of honey. And also the virgin queens will grapple for dominance when they first pop out of their cell. Sometimes they lay a couple of queen cells, and so they come out and fight to the death for the queen who will survive. But there will be no mass torture, no mass killings of one's own kind, because it would be a suicidal act, and it would mean death for the whole colony. There's only a straightforward, honest, hard day's labor on behalf of the whole. As a minister, I see this as the gospel in action. It is putting walking shoes on what it means to love one another, to love one's enemies, and be compassionate. And I don't think anyone would ever accuse a buzzy invertebrate of being compassionate, but it sure looks and smells and acts like compassion. They even allow us as humans who have colonized them for centuries to steal their honey and pollen and all the other gifts of the hive, such as royal jelly and propolis for medicine. Not that they are warm-hearted creatures, no, but I see this as part of the economy of grace that is in motion around us at any given time that we often are blind to, an economy of grace that sustains us and nurtures us. And so it is a reciprocity, and our gift back is how we care for that life together. As I have left ministry for the time being, The bees have continued to be a spiritual teacher for me, and when I go into the hive, it's really a contemplative practice, actually. I have to slow down. I have to be in a good space, or they will smell it and sense it, even if you use smoke. And even if I do go in a foul mood sometime, the bees will calm me down because it's a very focused, contemplative act when you're in the hive. So you can read the sometimes joyous, sometimes horrendous, never a dull moment on my blog, thinklikeabee.org. As I have left ministry, I have also had many reoccurring thoughts, old and new, about organized religion. And I fear that many religions have become a smokescreen for their particular brand of tribalism, using their God names to justify dominance and superiority. Judgment can be particularly omnipresent and oppressive in any brand of religion. Whether it's about the person next to us in the pew, whether it's about our neighbor, the person at the coffee watering hole at work, whether it's about our Muslim friend in the next town. But the thing I appreciate about the hive mind is the whole colony of bees is that they cover over a multitude of sins by working together in the trenches, day after day, month after month, year after year. I've come to think that organized religion at its best would be, alongside our beautiful rituals and nourishing worship, to regularly act in the trenches together with people who are not like us at all. There is a book called Take This Bread, and I encourage you to pick it up if you have a chance, by Sarah Miles, a self-avowed atheist, a lesbian, former sous chef, war zone journalist, and mom. She said, when she came to the Episcopal Church, she was absolutely welcomed to the table immediately to come and share the bread and the cup. And from that, she began the remarkable journey of becoming part of this congregation in San Francisco, and then eventually starting a food pantry in her church. It happened weekly around the table, the Eucharistic table, that people from all walks of life would come in and get their food for that week. She loved food, having been a sous chef, and she believed in justice. And she never imagined what combining those nice church people with those people would unleash in her and her community, but it actually was something beautiful. So I hope you might pick that up. So as I have landed outside of Mother Church, sometimes not so gracefully, sometimes on my back end, sometimes learning on a very steep curve, I have been grateful for the opportunities. Thank you for talking about my Bee City resolution, which is coming to the City Council floor on August 15, if you want to show up and see that, what the City Council does with that. But also a project that we've had in the South Valley to work with inner city school students to mentor them in beekeeping as well as the art of organic farming. And it's been really frustrating and fulfilling at times. Years ago, I read the autobiography of Albert Schweitzer, who was a highly accomplished German. Well, at that time, I'm not sure how that lines were drawn before World War I, but he was an organist, a theologian, who left it all behind to go back to school and become a doctor and end up going to Africa. And when he was asked why he left a very promising organist and theology degree in the church, he said he needed to leave the well-heeled, polite society of European society and the ivory towers of theology and religion, because he felt that the air up there was rarefied, and he wanted to work in the trenches with people to alleviate suffering in the world. And he did. And he lived through not one world war, but 2 world wars. And he was tormented by the horror that people visited upon one another. And so during his life, his final opus was his manifesto called A Reverence for Life. And it was a call for dignity, respect, and compassion for all living beings, human and non-human. And this is a long time ago that someone was calling for this. And so I have continued to return to that because it was so profound for me. So finally, Our pollinators are in trouble, as many of you might know. Native bees and honeybees are particularly stressed out. I just learned yesterday at a Varroa mite conference, that sounds exciting, doesn't it? That New Mexico has the highest mite load in the country. Over 45% of our commercial beekeepers lost their hives last winter. Why? Well, we live in the perfect storm. We haul bees around the country for pollination. We insult them by dumping chemicals on the fields and on them. And then there's the larger issues of climate change, drought in this state, monocropping in the big ag sector, which is where they used to find a diversity of crops, just like we need a diverse diet, so do bees for all the vitamins and minerals. And finally, a loss of habitat due to human development. And so perhaps it's time for the tables to be reversed as we note our mistakes in regards to the creaturely world and honeybees in particular, native bees, all pollinators, and invite them to come to the table and ask their forgiveness for the ways that we have harmed them and offer them honey, welcome them, and perhaps seek healing and wholeness for all of us. So Doug and Steve wrote a song, a bee song, which is a call to action on behalf of the bees, and I will let them sing it as a way of ending. Thank you.
Oh, to think and work and love like a bee, see the flowers on the hillside, sense their freshness and their life, feel the glory of their blooming, leave behind all sense of strife. That may be a new beginning of connecting with the bee and knowing we have DNA they share with you and me. Oh, to think and work and love like a bee, see the universe around us, feel the power in your soul. Know you are a force of nature. In our oneness we are whole. So the bees all work together, and their work becomes their play. If we will know we are with them, we can live another day. Oh, to think and work and love like a bee. Climate chaos and monocrops, pesticides and herbicides, those manufactured chemicals are a form of suicide. Let us plant bee-friendly gardens, see our earth as one great hive, increase biodiversity since we want to stay alive. Oh, to think and work and love like a bee.